inspire, and make you think. The future is now. Topics and music that affect your life from Universal Broadcasting Network. Tune in at ubnradio.com.
Hi guys, this is Sunny Chayes and you are with me today on Singing in the Rain, and I am going to be chatting a lot about our Mother Earth and it's sort of Earth Day, Earth Week. I think every day should be Earth Day. And interestingly enough, 28 years ago, this last Saturday, believe it or not, we have this sort of commemoration. The explosion in Reactor 4 of the Chernobyl power plant in Ukraine released an unprecedented quantity of radioactive contamination into the air over Ukraine, Belarus, and huge parts of Europe and Russia, of course. And after the accident, that area, 19 miles, 31 kilometers, were evacuated, but as we're going to chat about in a little bit, none of it was handled very well. And I have the honor and a thrill, actually, of having a phenomenal guest on the show with us today. Katrine Volynsky is here to tell about it. She's a beautiful human being who lived through Chernobyl, and she talks about staying alive in a toxic world. We're going to be chatting about a lot of things about the Earth, about inner toxicity, outer toxicity, how to heal all that stuff, and how to be great companions with our Mother Earth, and just be beautiful people as you are. So let's bring Katrine on right now.
Thank you, Sunny, for having me. And yeah, it's such an honor to be here. Just 28 years later, talking about this experience that I have had when I was a child. And in the last few recent years, since the Fukushima, I've been talking more about this and been more outspoken, obviously, because we had faced a second event of the same caliber, or sometimes people say it was longer, even bigger. So my story became important. I felt it was important to share what we can expect, and that the fact that this kind of event's going to continue probably to happen because of the environment we live in and the amount of nuclear power stations and nuclear events. So it's very important to know how it will affect us on a physical level, how it will affect us on an environmental level, and what we can do as conscious beings to shift this reality to maybe something better, because we can't be in fear and we can't be angry about this. It can only come from the inner power and power of light and love, and just being grateful for being on the planet and keeping it alive, and vibrant.
Yes, our beautiful planet. That's so beautifully said. Thank you so much. And that's really what it's about, and not being in fear, but in being in solution. And that's what Singing in the Rain's about, hopefully.
Yes.
And so in the next 50 minutes, we're going to be bringing you some facts, some scary stuff, and what we can do about it at this point, because that's the only way we can handle it, is by knowing what the truth is, and like that. So we're here. So let's talk a little bit about your experience. Let's start with that, being 7 years old and you were driving through. So
Yes.
Tell us.
Well, I didn't actually live in Chernobyl. So as you said, we were driving through the area during the explosion, and we were going to Crimea, which also is in the news today, and where we were spending most of our summers, because my grandmother, who I grew up with, was in charge of a summer camp. So we were going through the area, and we had no idea what was happening. Several days we were getting exposed to the massive radiation levels. And there was some talk once we got to some of the places that there was an explosion and there was a problem on the station, but no one knew the extent of it, because no one was being evacuated. No one was being told not to be outside, and
Well, and this was completely unprecedented, so no one knew anything.
No one knew exactly what was happening, but it was also the way it was handled, because of the Soviet Union and because of the all the politics that came with living in the Soviet Union, and the Soviet Union against the United States and all those kind of things. They kept the information in. I actually saw a clip only recently from the United States, from the news station that was covering the event at that time, and they got all the details wrong. They didn't know what was happening, because Soviet Union was not releasing the information. There was just they just said there was an explosion, there may be some problems, but no one knew the extent of it. So yes, from one point of view, no one knew the extent of the kind of health conditions of what this can cause, and from another point of view, it was highly political situation that needed to be controlled, right? No one wanted panic, but also no one wanted real information out.
Yes.
And it was several weeks before we actually knew the extent of our exposure. We actually got into our destination, and my grandmother, who was in charge of summer camp, got a message that she's going to be receiving kids from Chernobyl area to take care of, because they wanted to relocate them at that point. And again, no one told how to handle. There was very little information on how to even handle the closing of these kids. All they did was dig up a hole in the back of the camp, and within days, when my grandmother was receiving the kids and handling the clothes and burning it in the back, her hands started cracking, and she started getting sick herself, like bleeding. So you can tell again, you can't smell it, you can't taste it, you can't understand how damaging something like that can be once attaching the skin, let's say, right? Or if you're inhaling it. So we got an exposure there as well, just being around, the kids directly that were living there post-exposure for like several weeks still. And then later on, what ended up happening, we moved to Belarus. And unknown to us, we were in the area that was getting 40% of a fallout.
Oh, no.
So for years, we were getting exposed now through the soil and through the food and through the water. I kind of joke about that now, because, I got into that place of being in that relationship with radiation, that I had an intimate relationship with radiation levels.
Yeah.
Because post-Belarus, we ended up living in another place in Murmansk, where, literally 100 meters away from my school, there was a nuclear nuclear icebreakers and submarines, so there was a lot of exposure too as well. So it was very interesting how it just kind of followed me all around my life.
So you were mentioning that when you were 15, you had some very serious...
Well, yeah, so the serious implications, health implications started later on for me. I consider my family to be extremely lucky. We had not lost anyone to cancer. Everyone in my family did have cancer. So my mom, my grandmother, my cousin had leukemia. So I was the only one that didn't get diagnosed with cancer. I ended up just having a lot of endocrinological issues. And that's one of the first things we get hit with as women. It's a place where we get a lot of free radical damaging. It's a very sensitive area. And a lot of the kids my age were having a lot of problems in that department. So when I was 15, I ended up having an experience, and before that, for several years, I was basically extremely anemic, and my body couldn't just handle a lot of the environmental stressors, and was losing consciousness all the time. It was crazy. And finally, I got into a place where I was so sick of doctors, I didn't want to tell anyone what was happening with me. And one of the days, I just ended up bleeding to death, basically. And I was brought in, and my heart had stopped, and it was stopped for several minutes. And I did have a near-death experience that now I understand. Of course, at that time, I was 15 years old, and I've never heard anyone talk about near-death experiences, and I never knew anything about the other side, or being a soul that can live in and out of the body, right? So
or living indefinitely, like forever.
It was definitely a shocking experience, even from a conscious point of view, when I came back, and it took me years to even realize what had happened.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't until I was in my 20s and I started getting into spiritual work and into meditation and into self-awareness that I understood what had transpired and how I ended up being brought back.
Yeah. So what I want to touch on here with you being here in the studio today is about, so this happened 28 years ago.
Yes.
And then we've just had Fukushima, which has happened really recently. And so what would you say to people? What do you say to me as far as what obviously we have not learned, but what we can, sort of with first of all, with the toxic world that we have right now. We have it from many different areas. We have it from the plastics. We have it from the Industrial Revolution that we've stepped into in the last 200 years to live our lives very, very differently than we did before. Nowhere near as connected to the earth and to our sacred aspect of life than we did before. So you're sort of a walking example of all of it, because you've lived in all of it.
Oh, well, yes. So what would I say?
Because now you live in Sedona, so you live in one of the most sacred places on earth.
It is true, yes. So the question was, what would I say, how to handle this kind of
well, I mean,
life?
let's just have a conversation about what can we do, because people are
Right.
listening, and this is a disaster that happened before. There's still effects. There's
Yes,
still
there's definitely still effects. And of course, Fukushima, we're experiencing effects daily. Of course, it's going to be continuing too. That's another thing too. Is I don't think we're going to have a huge, massive shift in our nuclear industry in the next few years. So we have to live in this environment and understand the fact that we're probably going to get exposed to this again. It's not going to be, a condition where there's not going to be any more events like this. I think it was Max Planck University that had calculated it's 225 times more likely now than ever before to have a major nuclear event every 5 years. Just the amount of nuclear power stations and safety issues. So the fact is, we have to get educated. We have to educate it, and we have to come from a position of being aware and not in fear of this kind of information. Because there is a lot of disinformation and there is a lot of fear around the subjects of nuclear radioactivity and toxicity, and denying the fact that this is happening and not doing anything about it is not going to change our exposure to it, right?
Right.
So it starts
what do we
with
do?
education.
Yes.
It starts with education and awareness, and not falling into a place where you start being afraid of some of the alternative
Right.
news, because they can kind of get onto a crazy side, and not trusting a lot of the government things that are coming through, because it's not in their interest, let's say, to cause panic, and fear. And there's a lot of new information that's coming through of how to understand radiation, let's say, some of the toxic events. So kind of taking the middle road,
Okay.
understanding that we're never going to get the full truth, right? And we're still in learning process, and kind of coming from a point of view of, okay, what are the most important topics that I can educate myself on? It's definitely radioactivity, it's definitely toxicity that we have. And second is understanding how we can thrive physically, because if you're sick and if you're unwell and if you are in effect of a lot of these kind of issues, there's not much we can do outwardly as well, right?
Right,
So
right,
coming in from
absolutely.
creating our reality physically, and then of course consciously too, understanding how we think about this kind of events and this kind of toxins in our environment. Where are we coming from? Again, are we coming from fear? Are we coming from a place where we know that we have the power to do something from
Right.
from our internal selves?
So would you say, I mean, there are different things that people are dealing with right now, just even things like GMOs, for example,
of
or
course.
radiation as far as in hospitals for breast exams and things like that. I mean, they're, like you say, I think at this point we're going to be finding out more and more things as we go through. What is science? We know to hold it lightly in our hand because it changes. What is the truth? That changes all the time. So as far as what we do, I mean, for me, I have a lot of breast cancer in my family, and I don't really get mammograms. I just don't
Right.
do it because I just don't want to. And I don't think it helps me. And I mean, that's it's not even really about putting my head in the sand. I
Right.
honestly feel that it's more detrimental than not. And so
Yes,
that's
yes.
my choice, but that's what I do. So in ways like that, what do you think about that?
Well, I totally understand that, because a lot of times we give our power away.
Right.
We had learned to listen to everybody else, to the doctors, to nutritionists, but not to our inner selves. So we are the only animals in the world, that need to be told what to eat.
Right, exactly.
A cat knows what to eat. The dog knows what to eat, right?
That's so
there's-
true.
it-
I just
it's-
read that like 4 different places in the last week.
Yeah, there's a
we're
lot of
the only.
disconnect.
Yes, exactly.
And a lot of disconnect happens because we've been living in a society that values mind, that values success, that has a different set of values that takes us out of our heart and out of our bodies. Just look at the craziness of 9 to 5 work.
Exactly.
Not everybody is supposed to be up and early at 6 o'clock in the morning, going with their biorhythms to be able to go to the gym, or make a smoothie, right, and then get to work. So there's no even understanding of simple fact that we are all different and we all run on different cycles, right? So we are being forced into all these kind of labels and these boxes, right, that take us out of our inner selves and our connection to our blueprint for health, to
Yes.
our connection to earth, to our connection to spirit. So a lot of this inner work and better future comes from taking time every day to get into our body and ask, what is it that I need, right? Not as what my doctor tells me that I need. And it takes time, and it takes time and it takes practice to hear the difference between belief systems that we've been ingrained with, like yourself, right? You don't want to go into get a mammogram because someone's going to tell you have cancer. Right away, that diagnosis creates a reality where you're more likely to actually have it and not go through it, let's say, right? And not heal, right? Because a lot of people just take the word of someone else as a truth, right? They don't understand that they have power to better reality and to better future, right?
Right. And the thing is that we, again, with our knowing that we have a huge ability to know the truth. We really do.
We do.
And when we are quiet and when we are not allowing all of this chatter, this monkey mind chatter to go on, there is so much phenomenal wisdom that comes to us that we just have. It doesn't even come to us. We have. I actually want to read you a letter. I love this letter so much. This is from Chief Seattle, who was an amazing chief, Native American years ago. And this is the idea of like what is our connection with the earth and how we feel that we can buy things, that we have things, that we can buy land, that we as human beings have more power over the earth when for thousands and thousands of years, 175,000 years, we lived knowing that the earth was that we were a sacred being to be able to be on the earth and to appreciate the earth as far as the land, the water, the sky, and all that. I know you're choking up. I'm going to choke up. Wait till I read this. This is sent to the President of the United States in the year 1800. The President in Washington sends word that he wishes to buy our land. Buy our land? But how can you buy or sell the sky, the land? The idea is strange to us. If we do not own the freshness of the air and the sparkle of the water, how can you buy them? Every part of this earth is sacred to my people. Every shining pine needle, every sandy shore, every mist in the dark woods, every meadow, every humming insect, all are holy in the memory and experience of my people. This we know. The earth does not belong to man. Man belongs to the earth. All things are connected like the blood that unites one family. Man did not weave the web of life. He is merely a strand in it. Whatever he does to the web, he does to himself. No man, be he red man or white man, can be apart. One thing we know, there's only one God. We are all brothers. So that's a deal. That's the story, and we forget that for some reason. We've really disconnected. And yet I do feel very strongly, I don't know if it's just because I live in a fairly awake land in California, United States of America, but I do feel that it's a lot of places where I'm feeling a lot of awakening going on. And again, I just feel that. I think it's true.
I think that's true too. I do see the difference too between some of the younger people coming in. When I was, let's say, 18, 19, I was not interested in any of this stuff. And I was not interested in planting my garden. I was not interested in saving my compost, and recycling. But I do see a lot of the younger people coming in with the awareness of that and having that awareness at 17, 18 years old that I had no idea about.
There's kind of both going on. There is sort of a fear that goes on with younger people. I have kids too. There's sort of almost a despondency, like, what the hell does it matter? What if I don't drink a water bottle? What if I recycle this one thing? What does it matter? Like, what the hell? Everything is such a mess out there. What does it matter? And then we do know that it is that ripple effect, the 100th monkey, the 1 millionth snowflake. We know that every little bit of our consciousness can make a huge difference, and one bit of positive energy can override millions of bits of negative energy. Yes. And yet not everybody does know that. So I find that there is a bit of both. Actually, John, do we have Ksusha on mic? Ksusha, so I want to introduce Ksusha Genenfeld, who is joining us today. So she's also my Russian daughter. Come a little closer to the mic. And she's 17, almost 18. And I will just tell you guys that when she first came here from Russia, she was really not about recycling. She was in my house where I don't even use anything. I don't even recycle. I just reuse everything. And she was like, what the hell, what does all this matter? Right, girl?
Yeah. Thanks. for me, when I first came to America, I didn't see any point of recycling or, reusing bottles because no one did that in Russia, where I'm from. And just, seeing people actually take a stand and actually, recycle things, it makes me want to do that too. And as you said before, one person can make a difference. And I do believe that.
Well, one thing I'm really grateful about for you is that you had, like we were talking about earlier, about the idea of consciousness and having a certain an environment where we're raised with our parents, with what is success, what is health, what are all these things, and we get them ingrained, and then we're only able to change so much. Most people. Some people can change more. But when you came, I mean, you liked meat, you loved meat. Actually, a lot of Russians love meat, I understand. And then you became a vegetarian 5 months ago. So that's, I feel, a big, big change for you.
Yeah.
And I just kind of see it in a lot of other ways. But, so chat about that a little bit.
Yeah, well, when I first came to America, I went to this French school, and then I transferred to another school, which was more, environmental conscious.
And socially conscious and talking about all kinds of stuff.
Yes. Yeah. And then I got a chance to take this class, which was society and ethics class. And we talked about a lot of issues. We talked about things like, animal cruelty, prison incarcerations, euthanasia, and racism, politics, just, everything you can probably think of. And when we started talking about animal cruelty and just, the videos that our teachers showed us, and just realizing that, for me, it was the realization that we do not need to eat meat to survive. And, we don't let animals to have any say in anything. We just take their lives just because we want to pleasure ourselves and just because we want to, have something that tastes good. And for me, I mean, it's been, as you said, it's been 5 months. And I'm really proud of being vegetarian.
Well, what I see with that, too, is it's not just about eating meat. See, this is, what were you going to say to that, Katrine?
Well, actually, this is a very interesting topic because I talk about that a lot. It's cleaning up the vibration in the body, right? So vibration of animals, it's not that eating animals, can be right for some people, but the vibration of animals is very dense. When it comes to meat, right, when it comes into the body. And a lot of people have been overdoing it and overusing it. And there's a lot of the other things that are dumping down our ability to sense the universe and to get the messages like, chemicals, radiation, all those things. All of that gets us in a place where it's not as easy to hear that voice, to hear what the body says, to be plugged in into the informational matrix.
Nice,
so when you strip it away, when you strip away the density, right? It's not a mistake that yoga and a lot of vegetarians go 2 and 2 together, because one starts the other starts, or the other one starts, yoga, let's say. But what happens is, as you strip that away and you strip the density away and you become more highly vibrational being, it's easier to hear your own self. It's easier to be plugged in into an informational way. It's easier to hear the truth.
And feel the sacredness of everything.
Feel the sacredness, exactly. It's the connectivity that happens when you strip that away and you become more aware on so many other levels. And I've known, and it's not always to say that, if you eat meat, you're never going to be enlightened, or, you're not going to be an amazing being. No, it's not true.
We mustn't be judgmental.
It's not true. It's just much easier. It's much easier. Being vegan, being raw, eating highly vibrational foods, it just makes it easier for you to be more aware and to be more plugged in into the universal matrix.
Well, and what I appreciate about a 17-year-old from Russia coming over and being able to shift like that, I think that says a lot. It's not, and thank you about the vibration, because I think that's absolutely true. And like we were talking about before the show started, about being able to be quiet and be able to tune in and to receive our universal wisdom, which is available for all of us at any time. It's just being able to access it, which does get more difficult when you're in a lot of traffic, when you're eating dense foods, when you're eating toxic foods, a lot of sugar, a lot of white flour, a lot of GMOs, all of that kind of thing, and also being around toxic environments emotionally with people who are having, I was going to say negative, but that's a judgment too. It's so hard not to judge. I tell you, I'm so working on it, right, John? it's my dharma right now a bit to just let go of all that. But again, to be able to do that. So I feel like with you, Ksusha, being 17 and almost 18, that I feel like you're a little more aware. It's opened up the possibility for you to see other things, to be, not as judgmental as other people, to see that there are other ways to live life than just the way that you were trained and taught and everything in Russia. And I'm not trying to diss Russia, guys. By the way,
there's other places in Russia that are extremely aware. It's very, like I was talking before we started talking. That it's disconnected, connected society. It's really weird because when I came here for the first time, and I was 18 years old, I was like, and the whole family, we went to Safeway, we went to like normal places to get food. And the first thing we said, there's something wrong with the food here. I'm like, what is happening? And it's the same thing if you ask every Eastern European that had grew up with like her grandmother, growing tomatoes and potatoes, and this is like a normal thing. Exactly. It's like it's a normal thing. We grow things. We are more connected on Earth at the same time. But when you come here, there isn't as much connection because there isn't. It's not a habit. Yeah, it's not a habit of people in the city here to have a garden somewhere outside of the country, right?
No, it's very interesting and exciting to have like an herb garden. It's like it's kind of very boutiquey and stuff like that. But Ksusha, were you going to say something about sort of how just even the vegan or the being vegetarian, as far as really understanding that it just doesn't make sense to use plastic bottles or just these kinds of things.
Yes, and you've set that foundation. You've been telling me about this a lot, and then just, seeing other people do it made me want to do it too. But I think recycling is great, and it's sad that such a small amount of such small amount of plastic actually gets recycled, and people don't know that too. They a lot of people just get plastic bottles and think that well, I'm recycling these, everything's gonna be fine. I mean, I'm thinking about the earth, but they don't realize that that's not true. We can't recycle everything, and I mean it's unfortunate, but we can't just be so ignorant.
Well, thank you. And I like that, again, isn't it cool to have a 17-year-old be awake? I mean, and
course,
again, this is the deal about, I see Dex over there smiling too. We have Katrine's husband here too. And next time we'll have you on the show as well. But yeah, I mean, I think that is really the effect that we can have. And it's again, I was saying earlier with my sons or different people feeling that it doesn't matter. But again, I am feeling like people are waking up.
Well, it's stages too, for sometimes it doesn't matter. And then something happens for you. For me, it was a health crisis to wake up, and start searching a little bit deeper. And for some people, it might be meeting someone like you, right? Or it's just the right time, the right information.
Yes,
and
being
in the right field.
Yes.
And, I talk a lot about being in the field. And I'm a student of Dr. David Hawkins, Power versus Force, and of course, like that speaks to me. It just made sense. So when you are in the field of someone who is that, peace or love, you just cannot help but being affected, right?
Yes,
and
it's like being around people who are really positive and don't gossip. It's like you just feel like an idiot if you say something bad about somebody. It's the raising. And then because of it's what some of the mystics would call the attunement, when we raise up, then whoop, I mean it's a physiological scientific fact now that then, and so if the more of us can be, however, then the attunement will continue to happen.
Yeah, actually, bringing a scientific fact in, we talked about that before the show, and I think it's a very interesting thing to mention. There's a Biocybernaut, there's an institute in Sedona and in Canada that deals with this neurofeedback, very advanced form of neurofeedback, when basically people do 40 years of meditation in 1 week. So the interesting thing about this, that a philanthropist had gone through the program, and he saw how amazing it could be for some troubled places, especially in the Native American community. And in Canada, there's a couple of places where there's horrible issues. There's high levels of molestation, there's death in the school system, and suicide. So he basically sponsored a program where one of these kids could go every week through this very expensive but very transformational program. So what they saw when those kids are going back into their communities, that they've gone through this conscious transformation program and neurofeedback, retraining the brain to a different thought pattern, they saw everybody else rise in the community. It's incredible, especially for Native American community who has been suffering a lot. Not to say that other ones didn't, but it has been
again, that's
hard for them to disconnect like that from
yes,
nature.
That is a phenomenal story. And also the idea that again, the Native Americans being, or whatever we're going to end up calling Native Americans, because I think we're going to even change that name. John, think of it and let's change that name, because they need a new name. But anyway, the idea
Aboriginals in Canada.
Yeah, Aboriginals in Canada, exactly. You know, and again, of course, the Aboriginals have been able to hold on to the sacredness of life. And again, we in the Western world, you know, sort of find it cool to go someplace and be in a sweat lodge for a week and wear cowboy boots or some, you know, beads and everything as kind of a novelty. And, you know, again, more and more people are then really understanding that is the sacred way of life, and not just to do it for a week as a vacation, but it's really a way of being. And I was trying to remember, Ksusha, we were talking on the way over here about the power of one, and you were saying something, I think it was about business. And I was saying something about the idea that people can, you know, vote with the dollar or something. And I think you said something like, well, what did you say? You said something like, well, but it's really hard to get all the people to get together or something like that.
Oh yeah, it's just, well, I personally think that it's, I mean, as you said, we can change, we have power to change things, but I believe that in, you know, our society, it is really hard to come together and actually agree with, you know, with each other and come to a have just a one answer for something and just, you know,
kind of all gather on that idea.
Yes.
Yeah. And then I was talking actually about the situation with the American farmers back in the early late 60s with Cesar Chavez and everything. And at that time, there was no way they thought it was possible to get the growers, who were the man, you know, the big business, to be changed. I mean, it was like, well, just too bad. This is the way it's going to go. And then somehow or another, the farmers united and went all around the country. They went to Chicago. They were, of course, all over California, and just talking to the people and saying, don't buy grapes, just boycott grapes. And as a matter of fact, people did, and the whole system of it changed. And I didn't buy grapes. I remember I didn't buy grapes for a really long time. And so sometimes it can happen. It's difficult. I love the idea of the power of one, which is the tagline of this show. And I read that beautiful Native American letter from this book, which I love this book so much. It's called Life's Operating Manuals, and it's written by Tom Shadyac. Did you see, well, you were kind of here, but did you see things like Ace Ventura and Liar Liar and all those, know all those movies? Well, he did all those movies. He wrote and directed them. He's a pretty hilarious person. And then he had sort of an epiphany in his life. He had a really serious near-death experience and did this incredible movie called I Am, which I love.
Yes.
So everyone see it. Have you seen it?
Oh yeah, I love that movie.
I love that movie so much. And so then he decided to write this book. Well, he probably reads it too. So Life's Operating Manual with the fear and truth dialogues. And so it's so cool how it's broken down, because he literally has fear talk and then truth, you know, answer. And like it all comes from him. So I guess he's sort of schizophrenic. But he has in the book, it's called Dialogue 5. He has all these dialogues. And so fear says, Inception was a popular movie, but it will not make a popular philosophy. You are really convinced that people are asleep. And then truth says, I am convinced that few people live their own lives. Yes. Fear says, okay, you've seen too many movies. And then truth says, I've seen the truth. And then fear says, so society is a culprit? And then truth says, to point to society is to give power to what exists on the outside. Society is simply the collection or the collective energy of the individuals that make up that society. The individual must take responsibility for his own voice. And where is the power of error? We find it was, after all, not in the city, but in ourselves. And then fear says, do you really expect an individual to stand up to society? It's only natural that he follows the masses. There are thousands and he is one. And then truth says, God, this chokes me up too. And in that one is great power, the power to change the thousands.
Yes.
So young lady, you can be the power that changes thousands.
Of course.
I will try my best.
Thank you. I hope so. Well, let's talk about Fukushima for a minute. I'm actually holding some purple amethyst crystals that I want to tell you a little bit about. But so let's talk about what we think about that. I mean, it's happened again. I mean,
Right.
and we're I mean, here we are. And again, guys, like this is something that happens in our way. I mean, it may just be that we as human beings can only take on so much, but Fukushima did happen a couple of years ago, but it's still happening to this second. So it's not like, well, it was 2 years ago and it's over. It is not over. So we're going to talk about something today that you can actually do. So I like that power of one. But what do you have to say about that?
Well,
Because I know you have something to say.
of course I have something to say.
I can feel it.
Well, I'm actually one of the few people that I guess talking about it here in the United States that had a chance to go to Fukushima and were, not afraid to go after the explosion, because right after it happened, and I got a invitation to come as a part of a team that was bringing solutions and also doing some research. All of my friends that are also in, teachers and health practitioners said, "Oh my God, you're crazy to go there. You're gonna die." I'm like, "You don't know that. You have no idea what's happening over there, because how can you tell what the truth is when you're not there?" So for me, it was an incredible opportunity to actually go and to be on the land and to understand what is happening for people, where their consciousness is at, and where their hearts are at too.
So where are they?
Well, it was extremely. I kind of knew already what was going to be happening because I had dealt with Japanese culture before, so I knew how they view reality and their perception, and like, let's say in general terms. So I wasn't surprised to see a lot of things as denial and fear, but not. Especially fear around Fukushima area, and especially for mothers and for younger women who are fearing for their future offspring, right? So there was fear, but it wasn't enough for them to take action, or it was cultural not to go against the men, let's say, in both, I guess, ways.
Right.
And the second thing, besides the actual physical research that we've done, it ended up being more of a humanitarian mission than an actual research and commercial, because once we were there and once we were dealing with people that were displaced from the area.
By the way, I just want to break in to let people know,
Yeah.
because I think people don't really know, but there are 100,000 families that are actually displaced right now. So
Exactly.
again, that's families. So that means
Families.
times 4, let's say. So
Yeah, once we found out the kind of conditions those families live in, and I have a dear friend, Gudni Gunderson, that lives there, and he's not a Japanese. He's married to Japanese, and he loves Japanese culture, and he has a non-profit organization that has been supporting a lot of the people from the displaced people from the area. And once we saw what kind of conditions they live in, how they have no hope, and how for a lot of them they know there's probably going to be something physical that they're going to probably endure later on, cancer or something like that. There's some fear about that, but also not having home, not having future, living in terrible conditions. They will not live in good conditions at all. You would think Japan, such a evolved country. I was shocked in a lot of ways. So it became more of a humanitarian mission to help the people there. And
so what did you end up actually doing?
Well,
being
I
able
ended
to
up
do?
working with Global Village Partners Champions, which is another nonprofit organization. Mr. Barry Young, who's been nominated for Nobel Peace Prize, been supporting people in the area with water, clean water, food. They're building right now, he's in Japan right now from what I know, building other places for them to get relocated to more comfortable homes, not the little trailers that they were once stuck in. So I was on the ground and working with bringing more people together to help the Japanese people that are in the area, and also talking about the issue that it hasn't finished yet, and there's people that are in need of help and are in need of taking care after, and they're not being well closed, well homed.
Right. So there are, and I know there are some organizations, actually there's an organization I work with, Waves for Water, and they bring filters to actual places. It's not about drilling and all that. It's stealth clean water, boom, right there. So they've been there off and on for the last 3 years, or since Fukushima. Actually, they went there like that next day, believe it or not, again, with the fear of the radiation and everything like that. So I had...
And also bringing apple pectin, which is an amazing solution for radioactivity that's coming from contaminated food products. Because most of the people that were getting problems in Belarus were not getting the problems from the initial blast, but from consuming products, food products that were continuously contaminating through the soil and the water turnover. And they had found something very inexpensive, apple pectin, in Russia, in Ukraine, that they were using with kids because there was no side effects.
So what is this? Is it a powder?
It's a powder. It's a powder. It comes in powder. Sometimes it comes in no capsules. It's a tablet. In Russia, it's called the company is called Vitapec. It's actually produced by an independent institute of radiation study. And it is the only independent one.
So is it sort of it's something that you can add to the food or to your water?
No, you eat it before.
Okay.
Or during consumption. Anytime during the day you can take it. What happens is apple pectin is a polysaccharide. It's like a sponge. It soaks up anything that's in your digestive tract, basically.
Got it.
It safely squirts it out.
Perfect.
Right. So it's not a chelation. It's a way of just mopping it all out and getting it out of the body.
Perfect.
And it has 20 years of data.
So is this something that Japanese know about? And
yes,
is this
they do.
Now,
now they do, and it's been brought in both by the Institute of Radiation of Belarus and by the Yank Berry. He also has a company that's been bringing the apple pectin into the
Beautiful.
country.
So is it widespread at this point? I mean, do most people know about it or no?
There's going to be more and more awareness about it. I think only certain people that are looking for information and brave enough in Japan to know that there is something going on and they should be taking measures. Right. So I think it's spreading, and it's just for a lot of them is just taking the step forward and actually doing something.
Right. Again, because that is the idea that if you're a young mother or you're a young woman who may have children at some point, I mean, on one hand, we do have the survival mechanism in us to be the best we can be, because that is a survival mechanism that keeps a species going. At the same time, there is also the element of denial that is also strong with us as human beings. So both things can be playing at the same time. So I like the idea of doing what we can to let everyone and everyone know about this apple pectin, that they can get it. And that would be a great thing I'm glad that I know, because I'll tell any and all the humanitarian people I know who go to Japan to to bring it with them, to do whatever they can to disperse it.
Yeah, and there is other natural methods. It's just apple pectin seems to be really safe for kids and easy to use.
Perfect. And it's not very expensive?
This one is specifically not very expensive. By the time, of course, when it gets to Japan, it can be very expensive. But there is also another product that's pharmaceutical grade that's extremely effective if someone was affected.
And what is that called?
It's called propectin. It's also apple pectin, but it's pharmaceutical grade.
Cool.
So it's much stronger. Yeah. It's much stronger. It's like a different level, right? You can use it for treatments. But there's also chlorella, there's zeolites, there is seaweeds. There's so many amazing, wonderful products that you can learn on my website about. I give out free guide to the things that I've used, and also how to consciously look at this problem that we have and see it for what it is.
So excellent. So that's something that I want to talk about. And before we do, just not leaving Fukushima, I just want to say that I learned from someone, a great sage, who said that there is of course, these are all the specific healing properties that actually, as you say, absorb and then escort out of the body any toxin that can be, harmful, obviously. And then also the power of love and the power of crystals and the power of community. And so, as I say, this amazing sage said to me and to many people that what we can do is bring amethyst crystals to Japan and have, God, like everything's choking me up today, and have them all over Japan and get them as many places as we can. So I have Japanese students who come and live with me occasionally. So I took them down to a beautiful crystal store on Main Street here in Venice, and we bought all kinds of crystals, guys. So like for you who can see here, I'm holding all these crystals. So we clean them. We just clean them with salt water and sort of bless them. And it didn't sort of bless them. We did bless them and clean them. And then we're going to be taking, or actually these two girls will be taking back to Japan with them tomorrow. 60 crystals like this. And so they will, sort of the idea is they will take them to family, to friends. They might have one in their pocket as they walk down the street, go to a shop and see a little child, give it to them, just get them out everywhere. Do you love that?
I love that. And we can actually take it even a step further, because I know a lot of incredible scientists. I don't know if you've met ever or know David Sereda.
Oh, yes.
He's a really good friend, a sweet friend of mine. And he has a technology that imprints the crystals with really high frequency information and stays there. So a lot of the information that we do is like, that's why crystals absorb information that can be cleared away with salt water. This kind of manipulation, let's say, of information doesn't get cleared away. It stays even if you put it in salt water. So what he does, he puts Buddhist prayers, Tree of Life, Sound of the Sun, all of this really high frequency information pieces into the stones. And if we can maybe get a lot of stones to him, he could charge it for us. And there's a place in Sedona that he does it and get it to Japan.
Okay, so what is his name again?
David Sereda.
Right.
David Sereda. And he has a company called Lightstream, and he have a technology that imprints the crystals with really high frequency information that can actually shift electricity in the body.
Right. And many of my listeners know all how that works. So guys, that's something that we can actually do. Again, the power of one. We can actually do that and make a difference, and it will ripple effect in a huge way. So before we end the show, which we have 5 minutes, I want to chat a little bit more. While I'm chatting with Katrine, Ksusha, I want you to think about, because I'm going to ask you a question in a few minutes about, and I may ask you too, John, something that you feel that you can actually shift in your life in the next year. So, because we're in Earth Day, which book do you want this week? Okay. So Earth Day, April 22nd to Earth Day, April 22nd of 2015. So what do we want to, kind of make a declaration about changing? So you guys think about that. And Katrine, let's talk a little bit about your book and about the toxic staying alive in a toxic world. And again, that is having to do with our I feel that a lot of it has to do with our choices. When we eat a food, let's say, or we drink a water, we have a wine, we have anything that we're ingesting, clothes that we put on, environment that we're around. When we have a certain consciousness, we ingest it in that way. Like they say, and I learned this many years ago, that I was having kind of digestive issues, and then I was told, only eat when you're feeling peaceful. And at first, I kind of couldn't, it was like, oh my, and then now that's the only way I can eat. If I'm kind of rushed or upset or whatever, I just don't or can't eat. So, but that kind of thing, eating and doing everything in kind of a sacred ritual way.
Well, the book Staying Alive in a Toxic World was a product of my lifestyle that I was practicing to get myself back to health after completely breaking down at the age of 22 and basically having a couple of years to live. That's how fast my body was breaking down. So I stopped everything that I was doing, quit everything I was doing, sold everything, and started focusing on my health. And as a consequence, spiritual practice too, and changing my awareness in a lot of different ways, because you can't change one without changing the other. Right. Everything is connected. So the interesting thing about the book, talking about serendipity, the book was finished and sent to the editor. Actually, my husband just met me at that time, and he was reading the book. Guess when? March 11th, 2010.
Wow.
So during 2011, sorry. During the Fukushima event. So we actually finished it on the day of the Fukushima event. And everyone was like, oh my God, you actually have the answers of how to deal physically with all of this stuff. And the interesting thing too, there's an apple on the cover of the book. At that time, I had no idea about apple pectin. I had no idea that I would be working with apple pectin in Japan. Actually, it was like a year later when someone said, "Oh, apple on the cover of the book. It must be because of apple pectin." I'm like, "No, actually, that's interesting. You have to say so. How the universe gives you answers and puts you on the road before you even know you're on that road."
And again, if we are quiet and we're peaceful, the messages will come to us. And I love this apple that you have the earth on. This is so beautiful. John, I want you to give me a heads up, because I want to get a little bit of promo in. I want to finish with a poem from an amazing book called The Holy Universe by David Christopher, who kind of gives us a little bit of an answer. So, we have 2 minutes. So I want to say really, really fast for everyone who's just tuned in, Katrine Volynsky is my beautiful, gorgeous guest, and I'm so grateful she's alive and with us today. We are commemorating, if we can imagine, 28 years of Chernobyl and all of the aftermath. We also have with us today Ksusha Genenfeld, the young 17-year-old who is just about to tell us what she plans on changing for this next year. So in 20 seconds or less, tell me what you want to do.
So I think just doing what I do and even being vegetarian brings awareness to a lot of people. So when I say I don't want to eat meat, then people ask me questions like, why you're doing this and what's your reasoning. So then this is, that is my way to educate people.
Cool. And is there anything else? I'm going to ask John too, but while you're thinking, I'm going to ask John, but think about if there's anything else you actually want to take it a step further as far as if there's another activity. Okay, John, you're on. Or so what do you want to change this year?
What do I want to change this year? Well, there's a lot of things, but
give me one.
Like she said, it starts with you. So it's just really being exposed to more information and radiating that information outward.
Cool. So education, information, and as the Dalai Lama says when we're talking about changing the world, critical thinking followed by action. So that's pretty much what you're saying, right, John? So, and beautiful Katrine, I will let you almost have the last word. I will let the Great Transformation have the last word, but I want to let people know Staying Alive in a Toxic World, and your website is?
KatrineVolynsky.com.
And that's VOLYNSKY.
Yes.
And guys, you are with me. I'm Sunny Chayes, and this is Singing in the Rain. And I'm going to actually go out with this, John. We're not going to go out with Dancing in the Streets today because it's sort of a little serious day, so I don't feel like that's appropriate. This is written by the sage in a book, as I was mentioning before, The Holy Universe. And this poem and information is called The Great Transformation. Two paths through the great transformation now lie before us, one grim, one graceful. Will we travel along the first path, desperately clinging to our old story as a tyrant clings to the crumbling walls of his corrupt and dying empire? Will we deny the reality before us, ensuring that our children will inherit a web of life that has collapsed, leaving them at best with a diminished and disabled world, if not indeed stranded and starving? Or, raising our heads above our denial, will we travel the second path and realize the enormity of the dangers before us? Recognizing these dangers, will we see that we must act? Seeing that we must act, we will then indeed act and squarely face the challenges of this great transformation to bring forth the new story of planetary mind, the sage. Okay, bye guys. Are we off, John? Because I don't want to cry.
In the future, Talk Radio